Chapter 5. The Boat, the Sharpie Schooner. The boat lay docked and ready to go. All the solar lights were on. It originally had 3 masts, but he could only use the one. Tough luck. It was the only one he could repair, and had to use the other 2 to make the repairs. It was a couple's dream boat they used for fishing back in the day. It had a green hull with black and gold and white stripes. It had taken a beating all the years docked, but it survived. All of the parts necessary for repair were housed conveniently next to it in a converted shed/cave/barn. You could tell the couple grilled and barbecued and drank wine there, as there was a cottage tent-like atmosphere. It was a mini getaway on the island getaway. It even had a cozy little bedroom with a view for napping and sleeping and whatnot. He quickly picked up where the old man left off, and it was easy to know where, because meticulous plans were laid out in notebooks, dated with hand-drawn directions and plans. Used wine bottles turned into candles were all over the place. He once discovered a case of wine bottles under a stack of notebooks that he made short work of in a week or 2. That sent him back off the wagon for a bit, and believe it or not, that was one of the rare blissful moments surviving there. Good times. It was amazing. No hangovers. This was his part-time island job. At first he was continuing the old man's work just for something to do. However, it was later understood this would be the vehicle of his escape, if that's what you want to call it. He'd rotate days down by the boat, living there, working on it, then back to the lighthouse to manage the property, tend barley and wheat fields, write music, eat, sleep, read, stare at the Seamonster, and research it, plan to face it. He'd go back and forth, not only between jobs, but between courage. The Sharpie Schooner was a gift from the old woman's father, a wedding gift. It was a large kit and had to be built by the husband, the old man. I'm not going to refer to her now as the old woman, but simply her or she, and he the same. She received it as a gift from her daddy, and he thought it was a funny challenge/jab at the groom, making him build it as opposed to just giving it to him. Her daddy loved her very much and wanted her to remain single. It wasn't anything weird. She was beautiful. The father simply loved his daughter and didn't want her to leave and risk the heartache of marriage. The running joke when he finished the boat was, "Well, I built it, you prick. What's next?" All of this was chronicled in a leather-bound book, How We Met and Married. They both took turns writing and collecting stories in it. They must have had a time because the pages were smudged with barbecue sauce and wine spots. The old salt read it like a romance novel while he was working on the boat. Parts of it were laugh-out, riotously funny, and provided the entertainment he needed in the long, lonely nights, laying on the hammock, looking at the stars, shuddering when the sea monster would roar in the distance. In all honesty, one of the reasons it took him so long to leave the island is because, well, basically, don't laugh, he had absolutely no idea how to sail a boat. Oh, he could ride on one. He could drive on one while the captain was observing him, but just to hop on the boat and sail the boat and just go sailing? Nope. He kept that problem buried deep in the back of his mind until the days began to approach, and somehow, someway, after all the building and repairing and waiting and researching and planning and praying, it just, well, came to him. It just made sense. And though he was by no means an experienced sailor, he had to do this. He had to depart. He had to move. On the day he placed the ship's captain wheel on the main drive, it was like pulling the sword from the stone. He climbed the only useful mast, ran the rigging, the ropes, and simply painted it white. This was the last of the white paint. This was the last of the paint. Well, that was handy. Seriously? There's no more paint? The anchor had obviously never been used. It was placed on the front of the boat and covered up all these years. The boat was up and out of the water and resting securely on its built frame. It took about a full week to get it off the frame and into the water. This was the big challenging part. This was the hard part. This was the pain in the ass part. This was the forget this, screw this, F this, I give up part. In all the well laid out plans, nothing, and I mean nothing, was mentioned about how to get it into the water. Funny. It was like they were never even planning on using it. Building it was the fun part, I guess. Well, I built it, you prick. What's next? I mean, they hid the compass and never made plans to sail the boat, but it was ready nonetheless. He got it into the water. How much time do we need to spend telling this chapter? Just know this. At one point it appeared as if it was impossible, and at another it seemed it would drop and be damaged, which would have taken at least a month to fix. It wasn't as bad as he thought, and actually the mistake opened the thought of an idea he hadn't thought of. All hope was not lost, and when he got super pissed off, he just walked away and went back to other chores. And when he came back, calm and cool and collected, he repented of the cussing he did and went back to prepping. Ship in the water, anchor down, a few days to load the stuff, house cleaned, organized, oceanside cottage pillaged and cleaned. He took the writings they wrote, how we met and married, and stashed them in the boat's wheelhouse. I finished it. I hope you were all allowed to see it from up there. The ship's wheel, the hope bags, the guitars, the songs, the writings, the compass and astrolabe, food stores, the maps. Chapter 6, Division. Everything about his family, his wife and children, as stated before, was a lie. Well, not a mean lie, more like an incorrect memory. For the truth be told, they just disappeared one day. Were they taken? Did they move away because of the drinking? Did they get caught up, snatched out of life supernaturally? Who knows? That drove the drinking to whole new levels. And it was then that madness stalked, cruel like stabbing, poking torturers in the night sweats. The whole issue of what happened. What if he was sober and had made better choices? And round he went in the schizophrenic, double-minded madness of hangovers, puke, and headache. The questions he imagined would have blown philosophers and apologists away. He would have left them utterly speechless. And these questions had to have come from a different place. No way was he this intelligent. He would wake and read what he had journaled, and it would shock him. The division in his mind was crippling, and the ironies were just too much. Chrysalis, he thought. She had it tattooed on her ankle. It was green, emerald green. Repercussions of the butterfly, his son wrote the horror tale. He kept his children's prayers, their drawings in his research notebooks. They prayed for me. I taught them to pray. That's something. He learned not to look into the rearview mirror of his past for too long. Just long enough to remember how far he had come, but not long enough to want to go back. He often wondered, as he would note the little coincidences that he would notice through the years. Had their prayers been answered in the situation in which he found himself? Was the long winter simply the plea for salvation through chastisement? The same chastisement he was so fatherly about dishing out to them? In the body or out of the body, it was hard to tell. It is well with my soul. He hummed to himself, remembering the story of that song. He awoke. He was only alone at sea a few days, actually a few hours it seemed, till the clarity of the past, the fragments he could remember, came firing in the boat like cruel arrows. Remember, he had been on the island a long time, 20-some years, and the memories never hurt him the way they did now. Leaving the lighthouse island was good. It was a time. It was all wrapped up and everything put in proper place. So he left in a good state of mind. Last flight out. He remembered the coffee mug he drank out of that brought him hope of sobriety. Yes, everything about his family, his wife and children, as stated before, was a lie. Well, not a mean lie, more like an incorrect memory. They just disappeared, and that's that. He shook it off. The wind was picking up. Lightning flashed. Sailing wasn't real difficult the first few days. All went well. He'd almost forgotten about the Seamonster he had to face till carcasses of giant killer whales began to line his way like a runway. I mean big killer whales. Whole pods, whole family groups, just split in half, even the baby ones. It was grisly. The smell was unearthly. They just floated there. You've probably seen countless Lost at Sea movies, or read the same in countless books, so nothing here will be anything new. Salt, sun, wind, rain, no rain, dolphins, raging seas, calm seas, the fear of being lost, the sight of other ships in the distance. Nothing was different really. It was normal. The compass seemed to work perfectly. The astrolabe, a little getting used to, but all in all was easy to work. All was smooth sailing, tense, but smooth sailing. Then he woke up again, and upon waking, things were a nightmare. He'd taken a quick power nap as he loaded the boat with the final packs of food and realized he hadn't even left yet. The journey wasn't days into anything. He hadn't even left yet. And to make matters worse, everything was shaking and rumbling. The smell of sulfur was rich and deep, like a volcano or something. He had never been near a volcano, but the heat and the smell and the rumbling gave him the instinctual impression. It smelled like a wet dog, or like a tropical dirty lizard or something, like his snake cage or a fish aquarium he had as a child. It was weird, really weird. And then he saw two giant eyes behind the lighthouse. They burned like the sun, but it was like a flash, and then they were gone. His fight or flight reflex had his heart racing. Fear was nauseating and in his throat and paralyzing. Like those sleep paralysis dreams. He began to sing, "Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so." He always sang that, and it always saved him in the dreams. He woke up all right, but couldn't tell the difference between reality and the dream. He had that weird oversleeping, a power nap, exhausted feel, so everything was a fog. But his skin still bristled with goosebumps, and the strange, stuffy heat still lingers all around. The fear divided his mind. He knew he had to go, but this really freaked him out. That was the closest he had ever come to it, and the feeling was utter dread, big dread. Stay the course. Hold fast. He climbed into the cabin and looked at the ship's captain's wheel. There it was etched in it for this exact reason. No fear. He was going to die somehow, someday, so that could not be the deciding factor. He had survived thus far, and suicide was not an option. He reread the description on the ancient scroll. They are joined one to another. They stick together, that they cannot be sundered. By his neesings, a light doth shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, as out of the seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth.